Now, some say that polls are just a snapshot in time, but they do shed some light on particular issues, especially races. And in this case, a poll came out this week, and Matt Hennessey from, I'm going to mess this up, Tremont Public Advisors is here. And thank you for joining us on Face the State.
It's great to be here.
Right.
We're very excited about our first poll of the Republican primary, and we have some interesting results.
Are you going to do some more?
It's possible. So we'll see.
Let's go right to the poll so we have a better understanding of what came out this week. Mark Boughton has the strongest lead, right, with more than 34%.
That's correct.
Bob Stefanowski is in second with about 20%. And David Stemmerman and Tim Herbst are kind of battling it out there, pretty much in a tie at 14%. And then trailing them is Steve Obsitnik.
Right, who just got his grant from the Citizens Election Program.
Do you think that hurt him?
Absolutely. I think the delay hurt him, especially when you have Stefanowski and Stemmerman up on the air and spending millions and millions of dollars. So that really, I think, hurt him. The question is with the money he's received, the $1.4 million, will he be able to make up any ground?
Right. I heard, I heard different things, and I had heard that they were backlogged at Seek and they couldn't. Yeah. But other candidates seemed to come out and get the money. But it's also very technical. If you don't cross your T or dot your I, it's a no-go, right?
And especially for first-time candidates, of which we have a group in the Republican side who've never kind of gone through this process before. So I think this is an interesting poll in the sense that it shows that I would say the majority of the candidates right now are fighting over the businessman, outsider, Trump constituency. And that has played, as of this snapshot, has played well for Mark Boughton, who is a known quantity in the Republican Party. He's mayor of a city.
And it's his third go-around.
It's his third go-around,
people
absolutely.
know him.
Absolutely. And folks got to remember that, and you've mentioned this before, is that we have closed primaries. So you're talking about a very small group of Connecticut voters who can participate in this. So the idea that these are folks who have some background, and they're committed Republican Party folks, so that plays to Boughton's advantage. But with the millions of dollars available to Stemmerman and to some of the folks who received the CEP money, we don't know if Mark Boughton was at 48% 4 weeks ago and has slid, or if he has held on to this kind of core group for the Republicans.
Now, I could be wrong, but I did check with the Secretary of the State's office, and they cannot remember the last time we've had a five-way primary. And if we have, it's probably a very long time ago. It's certainly not the norm.
Absolutely. This is unusual on the Republican side, and what's even more, I mean, Democrats often, will pile a bunch of folks into a race, but Republicans usually have just one or two if there's going to be a primary. But what's even more interesting about this race is that there is nobody that is approaching 50% of the Republican voters.
Does it hurt the party, though, when you have so many candidates, for the Republicans to go to the polls? Is that hurting their message and their chance to take back the governorship?
It could be. And the reason being that whoever wins this race on the Republican side is likely going to have 60% of those who participated in the primary voting for somebody else. So the day after the primary is over, that person's going to have to do a lot to bring the Republican Party back together because, like I said, the numbers here look like, the winner is going to be in the 30 to 40% range. That means 60 to 70% of the voters in the Republican primary did not vote for the winner. So that's quite a challenge for them.
Right, and as you know, the convention is different from the primary and then the general election. Do you suspect that whoever, obviously there'll be a winner in the primary, but someone will turn around and run as an independent, although Bob Stefanowski says that's not him?
I think Bob Stefanowski would be the probably biggest candidate for that out of the Republican primary, and you just got from him right here that he wasn't
going to do it.
He said no. Yeah, he said no. So I think that the winner is going to, depending on who the winner is, they're going to face some challenges, which is Boughton is going to be seen more as a steady government insider, and not a Hartford insider, but a government insider. Anyone else who wins is going to probably be, absent Tim Herbst, is going to be kind of a Trump-affiliated businessman outsider. So
I think it's interesting how Tim Herbst really took over the Lamage conservative base, but Stefanowski's kind of looking for that also. In fact, he was the only candidate at the debate at Sacred Heart this week who mentioned that he was very supportive of Trump and mentioned Trump at all. None of them have.
Absolutely, and that's the fight that's going on, because right now everyone knows the votes that can be taken away are not going to be Mark Boughton's votes. They're going to be the 60 to 70%, 65% that are fighting over the business outsider Trump vote. And that's why you see the fights going on, the vicious fights between Stemmerman and Stefanowski. And even Herbst took a big swing at Stefanowski in the debate, because that's where the votes are going to flip. They're not going to flip from Boughton. And
well, this is the time, you know, with just 2.5 weeks left for the primary, that they really have to show their stuff, who they are, and why they're different. So I think we're going to see a lot more fireworks.
Absolutely.
And any other polls that we should be aware of?
Well, you know, we had done a poll earlier in May that put a head-to-head of generic and Republican candidate for governor. And the Republicans, and this was indicative of our past polling, did pretty well. So whoever comes out of here as a Republican candidate, in theory, has a bit of a leg up over who the Democratic nominee is. But the reality is, candidates matter, and it's going to really matter who the candidates are coming out of these races.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's hard to follow now, because you do have 5 people on a stage, and the Democrats, it's just Lamont and Ganim going head-to-head, and I think you can probably tackle more of the issues. So it's a good thing in a sense that there's a lot of interest, but also I think for voters. And do you think that voters really know who these people are at this point? I mean, it's interesting with Stefanowski. He was no one really knew who he was, and now all of a sudden with his ads, people are really more familiar.
Well, and I think that the Republicans have done, through their own spending and through their debate process, have actually raised awareness among regular voting Republicans. So I think these candidates, among the small group that is going to be deciding who their nominee is, and 100,000, 110,000 voters, I think there's high name recognition or high identity with at least a couple of the candidates. So I think that has, you know, normally you would say that's a crowded field. Will anyone know what happens? We're dealing with a small group of Republicans who are going to be voting, and they probably have a pretty high recognition of at least a few of the candidates.
Do you think we're going to see a better than normal turnout for this year's primary?
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if you saw a larger group of Republicans turn out. You know, maybe we get into the 125, 135,000 range.
Because traditionally, you know, people are on vacation, they're in the summer, and a lot of voters really don't tune in until, you know, when they get back and school starts.
That's
but
true.
There seems to be more interest now.
And I think our numbers in the poll we released earlier this week, the fact that the worst performing candidate has 11.6% of the vote in a 5-candidate race actually is indicative that there are real supporters for each of the 5 candidates. So
I want to thank you for joining us on Face the State. We hope that there's another poll out.
We'll see.
And we'll see how the primary goes.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Matt
Thanks
Hennessey.
a lot.
There's been a lot of pushback against the Trump administration and its zero-tolerance policy. Coming up after the break, a Connecticut lawyer talks about taking on the Trump administration's policy and bringing 2 families back together. That's straight ahead.